Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm here with a good buddy of mine that I've been corresponding with for not quite a year, maybe about 6 8 months. Eric Tarr, and I've known Eric Tarr actually from his tutorials. So he actually has his own YouTube page where he's got a big fan base where you do primarily like sound engineering and walking through VSTs. And that's Hack Audio, right? Is that called Hack Audio?
Yeah, so I've done some stuff kind of on the music technology, music production, that kind of side of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and just on my own personal YouTube channel, stuff with the pro audio files,
Mm-hmm.
uh, online page, and then some other programming kinds of stuff with Hack Audio.
Yeah, yeah, and so I actually knew about Eric before Eric contacted me about the audio programmer, and it was just an honor to actually be contacted by him because you
I
have
don't know about that.
you have quite a fan base there, don't you? I think how many subscribers do you have on your page? I mean, it must be
I don't know.
it's in
A
like
few
the
thousand.
ten. I think it's in the tens of thousands. I would say.
Yeah, I mean, but
Yeah.
all this to say, I've been a long time follower of what you've been doing too, watching it, learning from it, using it as a resource for myself. I have students that I always turn on to the channel and stuff like that. So I've
Wow.
been following you just as long, if not longer.
Oh, thanks a lot. I mean, that's a real honor to hear, considering Eric is actually I'm going to just look on my reference here, professor of audio engineering technology at Belmont University in Nashville, Tennessee, and he actually teaches digital signal processing. And when a lot of people come to me asking me what good programs are out there for students that are looking to build their own plugins, and I always point them your direction. And because you've had alumni that have worked for companies such as Isotope and Presonus and Harrison Consoles, and other professional audio development companies. So to hear that you're using my videos in your classes, that is really something. It really means a lot to me.
Oh
So,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, what I love about it is it's just, it's such a valuable resource to have videos that you can go back and watch. And I always tell my students, oh yeah, before next class, go watch this video and follow through it, do these steps so that then by the next time you come to class, we can talk about it. And, whether it's a synthesizer, whether it's, basic plugin or something like that, there are great resources to have available, for us that are teachers by day in the classroom.
mhm.
This is just such a valuable resource to the community of all kinds of developers to have. So I love everything you're doing, man.
Wow, thanks a lot. That really means a lot. And and Eric's also been doing a lot for the audio developer community. And that's the primary reason why we're here today to talk about his new book. It's called Hack Audio, and it's called An Introduction to Computer Programming and Digital Signal Processing in Matlab. So this book just came out last week. Was it? No, it came out in July, right?
Yeah, just within a month or so.
Yeah, and this is really cool, and I thought, wow, I got to get Eric on the channel to talk about the book and talk about these concepts, and I need to pick up the book myself actually, and so let's talk about MATLAB. I think that some people may be familiar with it. There are others that may not be familiar with it. So what is MATLAB?
Sure. So MATLAB is a programming language and also kind of a development environment. It's application kind of packaged into one that is very widely used for lots of things related to scientific computing.
Uh huh.
So lots of things in engineering, all kinds of different engineering disciplines use MATLAB for kind of basic proof of concept kinds of stuff. It's also used in economics and finance and basic scientific computing, whether you're working in physics, biology, chemistry, lots of different stuff. It's a common programming language to use, probably because if people are familiar with Python, it's about the same level of complexity of Python, where it's pretty easy to get started with it. And there are many things about it that that are intuitive for working with signals, information as signals. And so that's why I think a lot of people end up using it for signal processing kinds of things. And then has nice applications for audio things too.
Wow, that's awesome. If you go to the Matlab site, like myself, and you actually look at the packages that they offer, the packages can be quite expensive, especially if you're an independent developer. But lucky for us, there's actually an open source version of Matlab that is nearly the same as Matlab is, and it's open source and it's called Octave. Can you would know more about it than I would. Can you just tell them a little bit more about the nuances of what might be different about it? And
Yeah. So I mean, there's all kinds of different price points for things that people want to make use of Matlab, all the way from they have, commercial licenses. If you're working at a professional company, that's pretty expensive. They have home licenses that are, 100, $150. And then they have student licenses that can be like $50 if you're a student or recently a student or something like that. And then there is the open source community. Because Matlab is so common, there's been an open source effort to make the programming language of Matlab free and open source, and people can use it outside of the Matlab application. That's called Octave. I think it was originally started, this is my recollection, which might not be 100% correct, but it was used a lot on Linux, and then I think people have worked on trying to make it available on Mac and also Windows. I haven't had much experience with that myself, but I know that the open source community is pretty good about keeping up with even brand new features of Matlab. So Matlab as a commercial software gets updated once, twice or so every single year with new packages of things. And it usually takes maybe a year or so for the open source community to kind of recreate all those new things. But since Matlab has been around for so long, most of the essential things that you'd want to do with signals for signal processing and that kind of stuff, you can do in Octave. And I guess what I say about using Octave or Matlab and things that there are a lot of people that work in industry that either use Matlab or Octave to kind of, as your first step when you're trying to test out, all right, is this algorithm, is this reverb that I'm created, is it going to sound good, or this compressor or things? It has some nice things for plotting and quickly to kind of just mock up something and see if it's going to work, rather than always having to go through the long process with C++. It's kind of like a first step a lot of times to try out your signal processing. If you get it working there and sounding good, then implement it in C++ and your plugin and do that kind of thing. And so I think that's where it is useful to people that are doing audio programming, and how it currently is used in a lot of commercial applications.
Can you describe a little bit exactly how that process is faster, or that it does serve as a better tool for prototyping, or a faster tool for prototyping plugins than C++ is? So does it do real-time audio, or how does it actually work?
Sure. So at least for how I typically use it as a teaching tool, and kind of in my process of development, if I'm working on a plugin, I might experiment with Matlab on some things where it doesn't necessarily, I don't normally use it as a real-time processor of signals, where you kind of batch process the entire signal, kind of like an Audio Suite plugin in Pro Tools, people that are familiar with that, where you just load in a sound file using one line of code, import the sound file, and then, you could do whatever kind of effect you want to do it. Then once you have all the samples loaded in, and there are some things about it that make it a little bit more more intuitive, or for somebody that doesn't have all the chops of a C++ developer, they don't have to worry about data types and floating point numbers or integers and all these different kinds of things. They can think more about the math of the signal processing and might not have to worry as much about the complexity of programming and having classes and objects and all these different kinds of things to worry about. One thing I will say is just about a year or so ago, the company that makes Matlab, they're called MathWorks, they added a brand new toolkit and package called the Audio Processing Toolbox, I think is what it's called. And it actually makes VST plugins that you can put in your host out of MATLAB code. I've only messed around with it a little bit, but it seems pretty cool. And then it's kind of a bridge between doing real-time processing and having an interface and knobs and these kinds of things, where I don't think anybody's going to make any commercial products with it, because you can't really customize the interface in the same way you could with Juice or something like that. But it is kind of nice for you can literally make an entire plugin in probably 10 lines of code or 15 lines of code. So for people that have experience with MATLAB and maybe have a library of their own code that they've already written, it makes it pretty easy to take your MATLAB code and actually get a functioning plugin out of it. I still think of MATLAB in general as kind of a playground of sorts, I guess, if that's the right programming term, where you kind of experiment with stuff in it, and then once you feel comfortable with how you've got your code working in MATLAB, then you go through the extra steps to turn it into a Juice plugin or something like that in C++.
That's incredible. Wow. I'd never heard that you could actually take MATLAB and actually compile it into a plugin that you could actually use in your DAW. That's pretty cool. So let's switch gears a little bit, talk a little bit more about your book. So the book is called Hack Audio, An Introduction to Computer Programming and Digital Signal Processing, MATLAB. And I'll go ahead and I'll put a link to it below. And if my video editing skills are up to scratch, I'll put a picture of it up here as well. So yeah, I've been working on my video editing skills. So can you just tell us a little bit about the structure of the book, how the book flows, what it is, a little bit about what it isn't? So let's say that I'm a noob programmer, that I know a little bit of code, I know a little bit of like, let's say, Python. Can I get started with this book?
Oh yeah, absolutely. In fact, I've kind of put together the material for this book based on some of the classes that I've been teaching at my school. And when I'm teaching these classes, I have people that start from square one that have never even written a line of code before. So this book starts with an introduction to programming that covers things like how to do basic mathematical operations, how to create variables, how to do the essential programming concepts like loops and conditional statements and functions and those kinds of things, so that people, if they even have zero programming experience, but they're like, hey, I know some stuff about audio, I'm interested in it, like kind of the first chapter is for people that are like brand new. And that, I think, my goal is to make it possible for anybody that wants to kind of get into it. So a lot of people, I think, that follow what you're doing have some more experience already with programming, and you just kind of have to, if you're going to work in MATLAB, you just really need to see, all right, how do I do a loop in MATLAB versus do a loop in Python or whatever. So it does cover all those essential programming concepts initially, but then right away it gets into audio kinds of things. So importing audio, playing back audio, exporting audio to new sound files, all that kind of stuff you want to do initially. That's covered really early on in the book. And then the rest of the book is all different chapters on types of audio effects. So it's not a heavy programming book for people that have programming experience, but then it does kind of go through for people with lots of different experience levels with signal processing, how to start from just changing the gain of a signal to doing things like amplitude modulation and panning and those kinds of things that are relatively easier processes, synthesizing different kinds of signals, how you go about doing that, test signals, noise, sine waves, all that kind of stuff. And then it kind of builds in terms of the complexity of the signal processing to cover things like distortion effects, all kinds of different delay effects, and dynamic range effects too.
I see. And does it how low does it go in terms of the actual signal, the actual tutorials itself? I mean, do you get down into, let's say, like filter design or circular buffers, and do you get down that low, or is it more kind of sound one dot delay, then you pick a sound, and then you pick like a time to delay it from? How low does it go for you?
Right. So it does get to the point in the later chapters of doing filter design, and also doing things like there's a whole chapter on circular buffers and fractional delays when you need to create fractional delays and those kinds of things. So it does go through all the math that you would need to know for doing things at the sample level, where it's like it boils everything down to essentially taking samples at different points in your signal and doing addition, multiplication, subtraction, division, mathematical operations just on the individual samples, so that if you understand how to create a phasor effect because you've designed, you know how to create the filter that's used, the all-pass filter that's used for it, you know how to do the routing, and you know how to process the individual samples, then it's just a matter of putting it over to Juice and creating your plugin because you're familiar with, at a sample by sample level, what needs to happen.
Yeah, that sounds like a perfect book for me, because this is something that I'm just really learning. Actually, we didn't in my course at Goldsmiths University, we did a lot of stuff, but it was really kind of free flowing towards just kind of more what direction you wanted to go with things, rather than this is going to be the DSP lecture. So there are different concepts that I know kind of an overarching view about, but not necessarily the specifics. So this sounds like a great book for me to actually even get into some of the lower level concepts and really get familiar with.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's what I would say is the math is done kind of sequentially, that it does get a little bit more complicated, but if people are familiar and have a comfort level with algebra and trigonometry, and you kind of go sequentially through it, by the end of the book, you can do some pretty cool stuff on it, but it really doesn't get as intense as even, calculus or anything like that. So I think that it is approachable for people that I don't want to make it seem like it's complicated to the point that people kind of get turned off, because that wasn't. There are definitely more sophisticated textbooks out there that do more complicated kinds of signal processing than I put together. But what I wanted to show, both mathematically and also conceptually, is that you can do a lot of cool stuff just by knowing algebra and knowing programming and being able to manipulate the samples in your signal. You can create all the essential kinds of audio effects that we'd want to be able to work with.
Yeah, that's great to hear that your book is perhaps a little bit more of an introduction than some other books that are out there, because I don't think that there are a shortage of complicated books out there when it comes to digital signal processing. And like I said, so many people have come to me and they've said, I just want to get off the ground, and I know some algebra, I know some math and some trigonometry, but there is this hole where this gap where people that know some math, but they know some programming, but how do they get into the digital signal processing? And because there's so many concepts that unless somebody told them to you, you would just never know, would you?
Yeah. And I can speak partially from my own experience, and my philosophy on it as a teacher is when I was in school, this goes back longer than I like to admit, but it was the case, if you had an interest in audio signal processing or kind of creating plugins and stuff, basically your only option was to go spend a couple years taking computer programming classes that had nothing to do with audio, take a couple classes in electrical engineering that might not even have anything to do with signal processing to get to that point. You'd have to take a bunch of math classes, and it's probably 3 or 4 years where you even have kind of the essential skill set to even kind of get started in some of these advanced textbooks. And so it was like, for me as a teacher, and also just having gone through that experience myself, it was like, you know what? Like, I think what people need is they need to take advantage of their passion for saying, I'm interested in audio, and rather than a roundabout process of all these other classes you got to take separately, just put it all together into one thing that takes you from starting from square one, not knowing any programming, maybe knowing basic level of math, having some concepts of audio about what's frequency, what's amplitude, and have something that takes you from that point up to, all right, you've implemented all these basic kinds of audio effects. And then if you want to go on to the advanced stuff, go on to the advanced stuff. But at least while you've learned these skills, you've been playing around with audio examples.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I like that concept that you were saying. And this is one reason why I started the channel, was because there are resources out there, and experienced developers, I've heard experienced developers say, oh yeah, there's loads of resources out there, but sometimes it's tough to find the right resources out there. You can start off going and learning about C++ just as a language, and that will take you years. That will take you years, and then it's combining. It's because we're in such a unique position where we're combining the programming, the art, the digital signal processing, which is the science, and then sometimes the physics, that really makes it a challenge to really find that area. Okay, you can study physics, but what sort of physics would I need to know about if I wanted to do something like physical modeling? So this is a great resource, and it's great to have it there.
Yeah, one thing I'll add on to that too, just from even watching some of your videos too, and it's like there's always more C++ and stuff that you can learn. And I took classes on C++ that were just in the computer science department at my school and this kind of stuff. But it's like, because I wasn't looking at it and learning it through the lens of audio, I had this whole passion for music and audio. When I was taking these C++ classes, I like sort of learn the material, but even like going back and working on stuff now, programming plugins, watching some of your videos, it's like it clicks so much more for me because I'm looking at it through the lens of audio, that it's like all these programming concepts, they're like, oh, they make sense now because I'm, using something that I'm excited about in an application where I'm like, okay, for this plugin, I need this data to get from here to here, and all that kind of stuff. That it's like, I think, learning programming while you're just building plugins or whatever it is, your apps or whatever it is, that's the best way to pick up all these skills, because they seem much more relevant and you have a foundation that you're building off of, rather than just making, in programming classes, you'd make all these different kinds of projects that were just like seemed so arbitrary or random that it was like, you know, I feel like it's just such a better thing to be watching tutorials on the audio programmer about C++ when you're building plugins.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Yeah, that's something that I've found for myself as well. I think some people learn different ways, but I mean, for myself, I know that I'm a very practical person, and that you could teach me a crazy concept like, what is it? I was looking at C++ the other day, functors. I was looking at functors, and I was just reading kind of a general purpose C++ book, and I just thought, when am I going to use this? When am I? But and that's the thing, is that I'll learn it, and then it'll just kind of go out of my mind for a while. But if it was something that I needed to actually make something work, then I would learn it a lot better. And so something that I tell people all the time is, don't be afraid to try to just build something, and as you build, you'll find that the necessity causes you to learn along the way. And that's something that, and don't be afraid to look at other people's code as well. That's another thing I would say. Not to copy it, but to learn from it. And this is something that I've started recently with the channel, is that taking plugins from friends of mine that have made really cool plugins and walking through it with them, asking them about their design decisions, and why did they decide to use a static variable here, and why did they decide to use a circular buffer. And that really, for me, that really helps me learn. And I find that I find practicality is a great way of learning. It's a great way of learning.
Yeah, I love that advice.
Thanks. Cool. So I think that's everything. Was there anything else we wanted to touch on? Oh, so we had spoken. Eric and I had spoken about giving a discount code for people that are watching the video or that would like to purchase the book. And once again, I'll put the link below. Can you just tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I can send a discount code over to you for 20%. It's an author's discount that you can post and make it available to people that watch the video, or your channel, or the online discussion group too. It's out there that people can find it. You'll have to go through my publisher's website. It's published by Routledge, which is a division of Taylor and Francis, and also Focal Press. They kind of do the audio textbooks that you'll find there. And so we can send the link to the book for you to check out, and then you just put in a 20% discount, and you can apply the 20% discount to both the paperback or hardback copies, so the physical copies of the book. And there's also e-version available that you can put on an iPad or different types of e-readers, and I think that's even cheaper.
Oh, that's amazing. Great. Yeah. So I'll go ahead and I'll put that code out there as well once I have it for people. And I know that I'm going to definitely purchase the book. And I think that it's important, especially since we're such a niche kind of sector of computer programming. I think it's important for us to support each other, and to just when we see something like this and it's a good product and it's something that's really putting something positive into the community, to really take and support it. So I'll definitely be supporting it, and I hope you do too.
I guess a couple other things that I'll put on there is what I was able to do too is take all the code from the book. So all the code from the book is posted freely available on my GitHub page. It is Matlab code, but it has then all the math for the different kinds of effects that you'd want to create, and it's documented and all that kind of stuff. So I can make that link available to you if people want to check out that code. And then also, I have a companion website that goes along with the book. That's hackaudio.com. And on that, it has like short 5-10 minute videos for, at this point, it's over like 100 different topics to check out, whether you're trying to learn about panning or distortion or echo effects or the basics of programming, installing MATLAB, all kinds of different little short tutorials,
Yeah.
similar to kind of what's going on in the audio programmer, just focused on MATLAB more than Juice. So another thing that people, if they're trying to figure out whether they'd be interested in purchasing the book, they can get the code and they can watch some videos and see kind of where the material is at and if that's something that's valuable to them.
Absolutely. So that's hackaudio.com, correct?
Yep.
Great. Yeah, check them out. So, great. Is there anything else that we missed? I don't think there's anything else that.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, great. Okay. Well, once again, support the book, and thank you for watching. And if you're looking for a good DSP plugin building program to check out, be sure to check out University or Belmont University in Nashville, Tennessee, with Eric Tarr. And I think that's where we'll end things. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Take care.